It's been about 2.5 weeks since the Secrets of the Atlas expansion to Path of Exile launched, and I think it's time for a little solo self-found review. Please subscribe for more SSF content, and with that said, let's dive in. Before I dive into individual components and systems, I wanted to talk a bit about the overall impact of this expansion on Solo Self-Found and what I experienced playing Solo Self-Found in 3.26. In general, I'm quite positive about the state of Solo Self-Found, as I think that once you've accepted that the game mode officially isn't taken into account when balancing the game, it's a game mode that brings out the best of Path of Exile for a bunch of different reasons. I've made an entire video dedicated to why I play SSF. The point is, as a baseline, I'm very positive about the SSF game mode and I think it's implemented well. Not perfect, but quite well. I know other SSF content creators have a different outlook and feel SSF has been deteriorating over the years, but I hold the opposite view. In fact, I think it's only getting better. With patch 3.26, I feel SSF progression has become smoother and easier. Several systems from Settlers went core, most notably the gambling, which is a great way to get items during the campaign, and uniques later down the line. Plus, the town itself went core, providing a bunch of different items and currency. While keeping various key progression systems from Settlers, we get several new ones too. The Mercenaries provide items, currency, skills, and themselves, which has been great in SSF for all sorts of reasons. They solve a whole heap of problems and are amazing in that regard. Memory Strand gear, while I haven't figured it out entirely yet, provides another avenue of crafting gear in SSF, which helps. Tier 16.5 maps, while not a progression system in itself, provide a layer of difficulty and farm for various SSF viable builds, still rewarding you with plenty of loot but not requiring a super strong character. My SRS Guardian has no issues clearing these maps, for example, but struggles to kill tier 17 bosses. That middle layer between tier 16 and 17 maps was missing, and in particular in SSF those gaps aren't easy to fill until this expansion. And then there are various smaller changes I liked quite a bit. Rerolling Conqueror maps, that sort of thing. They're not purely designed for SSF, but definitely benefit SSF the most, and I feel we've seen a bunch of changes like this over the years. And as far as I'm concerned, that trend continues with 3.26, so overall, for SSF players, this patch has been a good one in my opinion. You may notice that in the previous section I haven't discussed balance or build variety. I quickly want to address that. I'm personally not affected by balance changes or build diversity. If 30% of SSF players all use the same build, that doesn't have impact on me. I may join them, which happened last time with Power Siphon Miner, or I may do something of my own with this league's SRS Guardian. If something I played got nerfed into the ground, which happened, I just play something else. Plenty of guides and options to choose from after all. I am much more focused on enjoying the game and what it has to offer in terms of systems, killing monsters, strategies, that sort of thing. I am much less interested in the builds that I play, which may seem strange, but a build for me is really a tool to achieve other things, it's not a goal in itself. I know that's different for others, but as I look at the game like this, I think it makes sense why build diversity and balance are simply less important to me. And I'm not saying they're not important to others, right? Just to be clear. I was quite excited at the prospect of Zana returning, and although we must deal with her somewhat entitled brother Egan, or Izzy, I think this expansion does a great job in setting up another storyline. We're done with all the Eldritch beings, at least for a while. We recruited Maven to be our play tool and loot filter voiceover. It's time to delve back into the Atlas to find Zana. We do, however, not get there, which is a shame. I was perhaps expecting too much, but the memories of Zana, while being told via, I think, great boss fights, ultimately don't seem to move the plot forward all that much. I'm sure Kitten Cat Noodle will tell me everything that I missed, but I was expecting more of a payoff after doing so many tier 16.5 maps and memories and going through that whole Egan storyline. I can't help but feel this expansion isn't leading too much and doesn't have a satisfying ending, which also diminishes my enthusiasm a bit. The storyline is only set up but never gets this resolution. This is likely only an issue now, however, as you would expect the story to progress in upcoming expansions. Let's just hope that doesn't take another year. Up next, the tier 16.5 maps, the originator-influenced maps. The idea here was that it is something in between tier 16 and tier 17 maps in terms of difficulty. The devs succeeded there, no doubt about it. However, while I do think it is smart to have an in-between tier in concept, the execution here is done using the same tier 17 mods which roll on the maps, and those mods are still complete dogshit, right? These, in my opinion, are some of the most unfun modifiers to ever grace an ARPG, and as a result, the enjoyment I get from running these maps suffers a bit. It's not as bad as tier 17 maps, I think they're easier to roll as well, and I think the tier 16.5 maps are what tier 17 maps should have been back when they got implemented, but it's still not very fun. After 2 weeks of running tier 16.5 maps, I am mostly back to blasting tier 16 maps instead, for 2 reasons. The horrible tier 17 mods, which are not fun to play with, that's 1, but 2, because rolling the maps must be done individually, and every time you must spend time on it, dealing with bad mods, spending a bunch of chaos orbs, that sort of thing. And apart from it being annoying and a reminder how bad tier 17 mods are, it also takes you out of the flow. It is simply not possible to blast a memory thread of 5 maps. You have to stop after each map, roll a new one, and then continue. That lack of being able to blast, to me, is a serious issue in PoE endgame. To me, Path of Exile endgame is all about blasting, which is why that map device pouch thing is so amazing. However, in the same league that pouch was implemented, the devs forgot to apply that same principle to tier 16.5 maps. This has to be an easy fix though, I'm sure this can be resolved. Another annoying thing of the tier 16.5 maps, apart from the modifiers, are the pedals. Again, it's an interesting concept, being able to buff, revive, empower and convert monsters, but the execution is pretty terrible, mapping it to the F2 and F3 key. You can rebind those, sure, but you cannot autocast them. I tried. Effectively, in these maps I am just spamming F2 and F3 whenever I encounter a monster pack without really looking at what the pedals do at some point. And the reason why is there's no difference anyway in terms of playstyle. You wouldn't play differently anyway, no matter what these pedals do. So this whole system feels like it could be completely automated and you wouldn't notice much of a difference. I wish we had that option, maybe at the cost of getting less pedals or something. I would take that option every day, but the way it is implemented now doesn't make me feel good, and also it's simply more buttons to press in a game that already asks so much of you in terms of buttons. What I did like about the maps is the art style and the visual design, both in terms of the pedals, the animations of Egan, but also the final maps of memory threads, such as the Theater of Lies. The environments you walk around in reminded me a lot of Path of Exile 2, which I'm sure is no coincidence, and I was impressed the first time I made my way through these new maps. Similarly, the Atlas gets an overlay which darkens everything and has flying petals in the background. It's a minor thing, but serves as a clear indication you completed the Egan questline, plus I think it's visually a great look. I do appreciate this attention to minor details from the developer side of things. Another thing I enjoyed about these maps is that they force you to do a bunch of different maps in order, which had me thinking about Maven Witnessing as a strategy, plus it breaks the monotony of farming the same map over and over again. Rolling these maps aside, I think it's a good thing you're being led down a path and play some maps you otherwise wouldn't run. Then, the new Pinnacle Bosses. I have heard others complain about these bosses not leading to anything, such as not providing a Void Stone, and while that is fair criticism I suppose, I think that's also an easy fix down the line. It is a similar criticism to my gripes with the story not leading to anything. Leaving out the reasons for killing the bosses in terms of progression, however, and just looking at the boss fights themselves, I quite enjoy these bosses. They are not very difficult, you can't craft their map items to make them harder, it's a one-size-fits-all boss for now, but as an introduction I think that is fine. The regular fights don't hurt much, but are already quite hectic in some cases, so an Uber version will be a bunch of screen clutter I'm afraid. Still, I will be looking forward to fighting the more dangerous versions of these guys. The loot that these bosses drop is very interesting, at least the uniques. It has already enabled a few builds, and I'm sure we have more to come because they are quite original, I feel, in their designs. The bosses also drop some other crafting related orbs that's first of all very rare, and I think only recently people started to figure out how to use these. However, I haven't seen much SSF viable strategies in this regard. There's a great video from Empyrean where he crafts a 1300 energy shield body armor using some of these items, but the stuff he uses is not achievable in SSF whatsoever. I'm looking for the poor man's SSF version, which I think is probably out there too, but that leads me to the next section. Memory Strand gear. Even after 2.5 weeks, I haven't interacted with it a whole lot, which tells me that at least for me it's not super appealing just yet. I am simply not finding great uses for this yet, although I think starting with some harvest crafts is the way to go. Then use a field chaos orb which consumes those strands, and then maybe a lucky slam or something. Or an orb to provide an influenced mod. I think that is the way to go. I'm gonna hold judgment on this for now. I do like the simplistic design and not asking us to have a whole bunch of setup before we can use these things, such as building a town or collecting 88 corpses in Necropolis. These things simply drop from tier 16.5 maps, and decent bases with high numbers are rare, but once there are some decent guys out there, I think very usable in Solo Self-Found. Also, these pieces by themselves simply have much better rolls than other ground loot, and that alone makes it worth picking them up in Solo Self-Found. Between these drops, the Mercenaries, and the regular high tier drops in maps, I had no issues gearing a character and didn't need to run stuff like Harvest or Expedition. I think it helps quite a lot in the gear progression in SSF, which I appreciate. The last big thing that was introduced are the Mercenaries of Trothus, which I feel overall is a big success. I've had a great time with these mercenaries so far, and they're amazing in SSF for various reasons. During the campaign, they provide a load of currency, which is very useful. A bit later, they start dropping great gear, and you can pick any piece that they're wearing, making them living loot piñatas. And of course, they can join you, which I think in SSF is especially nice, because they can be used to easily fill a gap or two in your build by their auras or curses or other gear that you can give them. Also, I feel it's made a lot of gear more usable in Solo Self-Found, because one of the feels bad moments of dropping a great unique which is entirely pointless for your build can now become a happy moment, because your mercenary may be able to equip this particular item. I see basically no downsides with the system. Of course, it was overtuned at the start. I already warned you guys in my preview video for the leak. It is always overtuned, something like this. And I think some mercenaries are still complete raid bosses, but for the most part, interacting and playing with them feels great, so it's a big win overall. I would expect these guys to go core, but I doubt they'll be able to wear an entire inventory of unique items. Some tweaking must be done there. They're way too powerful to go core like this, but I think they will go core one way or another, as they have clearly put a lot of effort in their designs, gear, skill sets, and even voiceovers. I haven't used any of the new Thartus skills. I've looted a bunch of them, but haven't seen any compelling builds surrounding them, nor have I had the inspiration to start tinkering with them myself. I'm sure it's just a matter of time, however. I'm aware people, very knowledgeable people in fact, are saying the skills are bad, but it just takes one broken interaction or forgotten unique to make these viable all of a sudden. Plus, Mathil will for sure try out a few of these and somehow make them work in the most SSF unviable way, but it was still gonna be a good video to watch. I wasn't too happy that Settlers went core. It wasn't a surprise, but the whole town management I'm not a fan of. I'm using it, but I don't really want to, and that's the main issue. It's quite nice that the town is built, and gambling for items in Solo Self-Found during the campaign has proven invaluable, and I think by far the best way to spend your gold, but constantly sending out the ships and doing the maps, I don't know. I've not even set up mapping really, because I simply don't want to deal with it. I haven't used much of the Recombinator either. To me it's really anti-gameplay, and I don't want to get my gear that way despite how good it is. And that's fine, that's my choice and it's SSF anyway. I'm not competing with anyone, but I still don't like it at the end of the day. Going back to something I thoroughly enjoyed, which is the Betrayal Rework. Splitting Katarina from the safe houses is a genius move, and having a permanent board to farm in SSF a godsend. I've gotten a bunch of decent div cards from Gravicious, and yeah, you need to know how to set this whole thing up or it's going to be of little value, but now is the time to learn, I would say. I'm not sure you should learn it from me. I think there are a bunch of videos out on the topic at this point. Either way, running a bunch of safe houses has been very enjoyable, and fighting Katarina has been too. She's a quick fight now, doesn't have a bunch of phases and immunity anymore, and still drops great loot. Then, some random stuff I liked or that came to mind when reviewing this patch 3.26. The map pouch on the map device, those 20 slots, may be my favorite part of the league. I'm not even kidding. This thing is one of the best quality of life features that's been implemented in a long time, and it's just so convenient to slot in 20 maps, 5 times 20 scarabs and have fun for an hour straight without stopping for anything. To me, this is what Path of Exile's endgame is all about. Clearly the developers see it the same way or they wouldn't have implemented this thing, and it's just amazing to have this. The pause feature is just great, super nice for when my deliveries arrive. I also love that we can get shipping rewards in the maps with lost shipments. It's a little annoying in terms of finding and clicking all the boxes, but great to not have to ship to still get the shipping rewards. And I mentioned this before, but the overall SSF progression I feel has been easier. There are now so many sources to get decent gear from that various options that were previously considered a must-have, such as Expedition, I think have become less mandatory. That's at least my opinion. Mercenary gear, memory strand gear, just ground loot for +1 wands, the field chaos orb that's pretty common these days. It's all readily available. I've had no issues gearing characters at all this league. Overall, I feel the expansion is really good actually, and especially the Mercenaries increase the longevity of the new content quite a bit. Other balance and quality of life changes are mostly for the better, improving the gameplay experience. A fresh start in Path of Exile is always appealing, and the hype around it very real and deserved, I think. It's really one of the few games that I'm genuinely excited about playing over and over again, which is quite special to me. I feel that in particular the new tier 16.5 content needs some more time in the oven. The concept is okay, but the lore and the bosses don't lead to anything. There are not many reasons to run these maps for me at least, and having to deal with pedals and tier 17 mods hasn't been all that enjoyable. I'm pretty confident this is gonna get better in the long run, as it's the new endgame, but right now I'm not entirely sold on it. And that's it guys, I just wanted to do a little, or maybe not so little, review. Give you my thoughts on the league so far, and I hope you're enjoying it as well as the video. Please subscribe for PoE SSF content one more time. I appreciate you watching to the end, so I will see you soon. Love you all. Bye bye.